Subscribe to our channel for more thrilling stories you won't want to miss. The night was unusually quiet in the city, a rare calm that made every shadow seem sharper, every sound more meaningful. Emma had always been cautious, but tonight, something felt off. She had just finished her late shift at the law firm and was walking through the deserted streets toward her car. Her heels clicked against the pavement, echoing unnervingly in the empty alleyways. She was used to the city's chaos, yet tonight it carried a tension she couldn't shake. Suddenly, a sleek black car rolled to a stop beside her. The windows were tinted, but she could sense the presence inside. Her instincts screamed at her to move faster, but curiosity, or perhaps a stubborn sense of bravery, kept her rooted for a second too long. The car door opened, and a man stepped out, tall, impeccably dressed, with a presence that demanded attention. His eyes, sharp and calculating, met hers. "You're Emma, right?" His voice was smooth, yet held an edge that made her pulse quicken. "Yes, who's asking?" she replied cautiously, taking a small step back. "I'm Adrian Russo," he said, his tone formal but commanding. "And I think we need to talk." Emma frowned. She had heard the name before, Adrian Russo, a man whose reputation sent ripples across the city. Rumors of power, danger, and the kind of influence most could only imagine. But a conversation. On the street. Alone. Her mind raced. "I think you have the wrong person," she said firmly, though her voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. Adrian's lips curved into a faint, almost mocking smile. "Do I? I don't think so. You've made a few decisions lately that have caught my attention." Emma stiffened. She didn't know whether to feel alarmed or intrigued. She had indeed crossed some lines in her career, lines in a personal investigation she had been conducting quietly. Adrian Russo was known for dealing with problems in a very particular way. And now, it seemed, she had drawn his attention. Before she could respond, he stepped closer, his presence almost suffocating. "I don't usually approach people like this," he said, voice lowering slightly, "but I believe there's potential in you. And I don't like to waste opportunities." Emma's mind spun. She wanted to run, but something about his intensity rooted her to the spot. "Potential? What are you talking about?" she asked, trying to mask the curiosity rising in her chest. Adrian studied her for a moment, as if weighing her worth. "I'm offering a chance, an opportunity. But it comes with conditions. Risks. Choices you may not be ready for." Emma felt a flicker of defiance. "And if I refuse?" He paused, his gaze unwavering. "Then you walk away. But know this, Emma, turning down an offer from me changes things, permanently." Her heart raced, a mix of fear and fascination. She had read about men like him, the kind who could crush careers or lives with a single decision. Yet, there was something magnetic in his presence, something that whispered adventure and danger she had never dared to chase before. I need to think," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Adrian nodded slowly. "Take your time. But remember, in my world, hesitation can be costly." With that, he returned to his car, leaving her standing in the empty street, heart pounding, mind racing. Questions swirled in her head. Who was he, really? Why her? And most importantly, what kind of life-altering choice had just been placed before her? As she finally reached her car, she couldn't help but glance back at the sleek black vehicle disappearing into the night. Something told her that meeting Adrian Russo tonight wasn't a coincidence, it was the start of a storm she couldn't escape. The next morning, Emma's routine continued as if nothing had happened. But every glance at her phone, every shadow that moved across the office floor, reminded her of Adrian Russo. He was a man who commanded attention, a man who didn't just enter lives, he invaded them. And deep down, Emma knew she had just stepped into a world where every choice had weight, and every decision could change her life forever. Little did she know, the clash that was about to unfold between them would ignite sparks she never imagined, passion, danger, and a proposal that would shock everyone around her. The next few days were a blur for Emma. Every time she tried to focus on work, her mind drifted to that encounter with Adrian Russo. She couldn't deny the mix of fear and fascination he stirred within her, a combination that made her heart race even at the thought of him. At the same time, she had bills to pay, clients to meet, and a life to maintain that didn't include getting involved with one of the most dangerous men in the city. Yet, Adrian Russo had a way of making his presence felt without even being near. It started subtly, a black envelope slipped under her office door, containing a single card with his name embossed in gold and the words, "Meet me tonight. No excuses." Her first instinct was to throw it away, to pretend it never arrived. But curiosity won. Against every warning her mind screamed, she found herself walking toward the location indicated in the note, an upscale rooftop bar with a panoramic view of the city skyline. When she arrived, Adrian was already there, leaning casually against the railing, his sharp suit perfectly tailored, his eyes scanning the horizon before settling on her. For a moment, Emma thought she might turn around and run, but the pull she felt toward him was magnetic. It wasn't just his power that drew her in, it was the way he seemed to understand her without words, the quiet intensity that suggested he saw everything and yet chose to focus on her. "You came," he said, his voice low, almost a growl, yet carrying an unusual warmth. I needed answers," Emma replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. Adrian's gaze softened just slightly. "Answers are dangerous," he said. "Especially in my world. But I suppose you deserve them." He gestured to the empty space beside him. Hesitating only a moment, she joined him, the city lights casting a glow on his sharp features, making him look almost untouchable. "I don't know why you're interested in me," she said, choosing honesty over caution. "I'm not someone who usually crosses paths with people like you." Adrian's lips curved into a faint, almost playful smile. "People like me don't usually notice people like you. But when we do, it changes everything." There was a pause, filled only by the hum of the city below. "You're clever, resourceful, unafraid to stand your ground. Most people either crumble under pressure or try to run. You confront it." Emma's chest tightened. There was a dangerous charm in his words, one that made her feel both exposed and alive. She wanted to argue, to tell him she didn't need his approval, but the truth was uncomfortable and undeniable. She was drawn to him in ways she couldn't explain. "Why me?" she whispered, almost to herself. "Why not?" Adrian replied, his eyes locking onto hers with a force that made her heart skip a beat. "I see potential. I see someone who could handle the life I live, someone who could challenge me." Emma swallowed hard. The line between fear and attraction blurred. She had always been cautious, but something about Adrian made her feel daring, reckless even. For the first time in her life, she considered the possibility of stepping into a world she had always been warned about, dangerous, unpredictable, and intoxicating. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said finally, attempting to reclaim some control. "You know that, right? People like you don't let anyone in, not really." Adrian's expression softened, but only slightly. "I don't let anyone in, unless they're worth it. And you've already proven that, whether you realize it or not." Emma looked away, fighting the blush that threatened to rise. She couldn't explain why, but she wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that, beneath the cold exterior of a mafia boss, there was someone capable of connection, someone who might see her not just as another pawn, but as a person worth noticing. The conversation lingered in the air between them, heavy with unspoken tension. For the first time, Emma realized the magnetic pull wasn't just about fear or curiosity, it was something deeper, something primal, the kind of connection that could ignite in a single glance, a single word. Adrian Russo had a way of making her feel both small and significant at the same time, and it terrified her as much as it thrilled her. Then, just as she was about to speak again, a sudden noise broke the moment. A group of men entered the rooftop bar, scanning the area with obvious purpose. Emma's pulse quickened. She had been warned about Adrian's enemies, those who would not hesitate to target anyone close to him. Adrian's hand moved subtly, brushing hers without fully touching it, and his eyes narrowed. "Stay close," he murmured, almost as if reading her thoughts. He stepped forward, and in a fluid motion, positioned himself between her and the potential threat. Emma's heart raced, not from fear alone, but from the intensity of his presence, the unspoken promise that he would protect her no matter what. She realized then that this world she had always kept at a distance was now crashing into her life, and there was no way to step back. She was in the storm, whether she wanted it or not. The men approached, but Adrian's commanding tone and a subtle gesture sent them retreating quickly. Emma watched in awe as he handled the situation effortlessly, powerful, composed, and undeniably dangerous. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. When the danger passed, Adrian turned back to her, his eyes softer now, almost apologetic. "You see," he said quietly, "being close to me isn't safe. But it's worth it, if you're willing to try." Emma's mind whirled. The fear, the thrill, the attraction, it was overwhelming. And yet, deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The clash between them, the tension, and the unspoken desires had only just started. Adrian Russo had entered her life like a storm, and she wasn't sure she wanted to escape. Little did she know, the days ahead would test every limit, challenge every instinct, and push her into a world of power, danger, and an unexpected romance that neither of them could ignore. The storm had only begun, and Emma's life would never be the same again. The following week, Emma couldn't shake Adrian from her thoughts. Every detail of their rooftop encounter played in her mind on a constant loop, the intensity of his gaze, the way his presence seemed to fill the space around her, the subtle brush of his hand that left a trail of heat in its wake. She knew she shouldn't be thinking about him this way. A mafia boss was dangerous, unpredictable, and the kind of man who could ruin her life with a single misstep. And yet, despite every warning, she felt drawn to him in a way she had never felt toward anyone before. Her work offered little distraction. Every case, every meeting, every client seemed insignificant compared to the weight of Adrian's presence in her mind. Then, as if fate itself had conspired, he appeared again, this time at the firm. He walked in like he owned the place, perfectly composed, every movement deliberate and confident. Emma's heart skipped a beat, and her stomach tightened. She tried to appear calm, professional, but her hands trembled slightly as she handed over a file. "Emma," Adrian said, his voice low but commanding, sending a shiver down her spine. "I hope you've been thinking about our last conversation." She swallowed hard, trying to maintain composure. "I have," she admitted. "But I still don't understand why you're involved in my life." He raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You're involved because you're capable. Because unlike others, you don't run from challenge. You face it. And in my world, that kind of person is rare." Emma felt her pulse quicken. Part of her wanted to argue, to reject him, to remind herself that this was dangerous territory. But another part, the part she rarely admitted even to herself, wanted to hear more. She wanted to understand him, to know the man behind the reputation, and perhaps, in some way, to be a part of his life. "Capable or not," she said cautiously, "this isn't a game. Your world, it's dangerous." Adrian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, filling every inch of space around her. "I know it's dangerous," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "But danger has a way of revealing who we really are. And Emma, I want to see the real you." She looked away, her mind racing. The intensity of his gaze held her captive. She had spent years building walls, protecting herself from exactly this kind of situation. Yet now, those walls felt fragile, as though they could crumble with a single look. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed, and his expression shifted instantly. The commanding, untouchable aura returned, and she realized just how close she had come to seeing him as something other than a mafia boss, a man with power, influence, and the ability to control everything around him. But even with the danger looming, she couldn't deny the pull between them, the unspoken connection that neither could ignore. Adrian's tone softened again. "I need you to come with me. Tonight. There are things you need to see, things you won't understand from a distance." Emma hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to refuse. But curiosity, and something deeper she barely understood, pushed her forward. "Fine," she said, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "I'll go. But I want honesty. No games." Adrian's eyes glinted with approval. "No games," he promised. "Just truth, and consequences." The night air was sharp as they left the office, the city lights casting long shadows across the streets. Adrian drove in silence, his focus absolute, while Emma's mind raced with questions. Where were they going? What did he want to show her? And most importantly, why did she feel so drawn to a man she barely knew but already felt she couldn't escape? Eventually, they arrived at a secluded estate on the outskirts of the city. It was vast, guarded, and unmistakably powerful, the kind of place that made her realize just how much control Adrian wielded. They stepped inside, and the interior revealed a world she had never imagined, luxurious yet fortified, elegant yet intimidating. Every detail screamed wealth and influence, but also secrecy and danger. Adrian led her to a private study, dimly lit, filled with books, artifacts, and photographs that seemed to tell stories of power, loyalty, and fear. "This is where I conduct my business," he said, his tone casual but authoritative. And this is where you start to understand what it means to be part of my world. Emma walked slowly, absorbing the surroundings, her mind spinning with a mixture of awe and trepidation. She realized that Adrian's life was far more complex than she had imagined. Every decision carried weight, every action had consequences, and loyalty was both a currency and a weapon. Why are you showing me this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Because you need to understand the stakes, Emma. And because I need you to see that even in a world filled with danger, there's room for trust, and perhaps something more. Her heart raced. She wanted to resist, to remind herself that this was madness, that getting involved with a mafia boss could destroy her life. Yet, she couldn't deny the pull between them, the unspoken tension that crackled with every glance, every word. It was intoxicating, and terrifying, all at once. For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging between them. Adrian's hand hovered near hers, close enough to touch, yet not crossing the line. Emma's breath caught, and she realized how dangerously close she was to stepping into a world she had never imagined, but perhaps, for the first time, wanted to. Then, as if reading her thoughts, Adrian's voice broke the silence. Emma, I don't offer chances lightly. But I see something in you that I haven't seen in a long time. And I want you by my side, if you're willing to risk everything. Her heart pounded in her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, to protect herself from the man who could change her life, or endanger it, at a whim. Yet another part, a part she rarely admitted even to herself, whispered that this was an opportunity she couldn't ignore. To see the world from his perspective, to be part of something larger, and perhaps, to understand the man behind the mafia boss facade. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted honestly. But I want to understand. I want to see why this world matters to you. Adrian's lips curved into a small, approving smile. That's all I ask. For now. Step by step, Emma. And know this, once you're in, there's no turning back. But I promise, you won't regret it. And in that moment, Emma realized that her life had irrevocably changed. The storm she had sensed the night they met was no longer on the horizon, it had arrived. And at the center of it all was Adrian Russo, a man who was as dangerous as he was magnetic, as ruthless as he was compelling, and who had just offered her a glimpse into a world she couldn't resist. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the night at Adrian's estate. The memory of his intense gaze, the subtle brush of his hand, and the way he had made her feel both terrified and alive, haunted her every waking moment. She had tried to focus on her daily life, on the work piling up at the firm, but nothing seemed important anymore. Adrian Russo had changed everything, without a word, without a promise, he had pulled her into a world she barely understood, and yet couldn't resist. Her phone buzzed unexpectedly one morning with a message from an unknown number. The text was short, simple, and chilling. You were warned. Stay away. Emma's stomach dropped. She knew instantly it was connected to Adrian. This was the world he lived in, the danger, the power, the enemies lurking in the shadows. She realized then that the stakes were higher than she had imagined, and that by getting involved, she had put herself directly in harm's way. She tried to push the fear aside, telling herself she could handle it. After all, she had faced challenges before. But this was different. This was Adrian Russo's world, a place where one wrong move could change everything. Despite the warnings, she felt compelled to reach out to him, to let him know she hadn't ignored the threat. Her fingers trembled as she typed a simple message, I got your warning. What should I do? Within minutes, Adrian's reply came, meet me tonight. You'll understand. The hours until evening felt like an eternity. Emma couldn't focus on anything else. The office, her colleagues, even her own thoughts seemed distant compared to the anticipation and dread building inside her. When night finally fell, she found herself heading toward the same estate where everything had begun. Each step closer made her pulse race, each moment brought a mixture of fear and excitement that she couldn't ignore. Adrian was waiting for her, as composed and magnetic as ever. He didn't speak immediately, simply observing her with that intense gaze that made her feel both exposed and understood. Finally, he gestured toward the city skyline, illuminated by thousands of lights. Danger follows me everywhere, he began quietly. And tonight, it's closer than ever. But I wanted you to see that, to understand what being close to me really means. Emma's heart pounded. I know, she whispered. I just didn't realize how serious it was. Adrian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. It's serious, he said, voice low and commanding. And I need to know that you're willing to trust me. Not blindly, but enough to understand that this world, my world, is not forgiving. The weight of his words pressed down on her, but another, more subtle pressure tugged at her heart. It was the undeniable chemistry between them, the pull she had tried to deny, now impossible to ignore. She realized that part of her had wanted this all along, the danger, the thrill, the man who challenged her at every turn. I trust you, she said finally, though her voice quivered slightly. But I'm not sure what I'm trusting myself into. Adrian's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. That's the first step, he said. Understanding the risk and choosing to move forward anyway. Most people never make it this far. As they stood together, a sudden noise cut through the quiet night. Emma froze as shadows moved near the perimeter of the estate. Adrian's demeanor shifted instantly, the charm replaced by cold, lethal precision. Stay close, he commanded. In a blur of motion, he moved toward the potential threat, his movements calculated, precise, and terrifying in their efficiency. Emma's heart raced, not just from fear, but from the intoxicating realization of Adrian's power. She had seen danger before, but never like this. He was unstoppable, unrelenting, and utterly compelling. And in that moment, she understood why she had been drawn to him, not just for the romance, not just for the thrill, but because he represented a world she had never dared to enter, yet now couldn't imagine leaving. When the threat was neutralized, Adrian returned to her side, his expression softening slightly. This is my life, he said quietly. And now, it's part of yours too. There's no turning back, Emma. But I promise, I'll protect you. Always. The sincerity in his voice, the intensity in his eyes, made her chest tighten. For the first time, she felt a dangerous mixture of fear, excitement, and desire all at once. She wanted to trust him completely, to step fully into his world, but she also knew she had to tread carefully. The stakes were higher than anything she had faced before, and one wrong move could destroy everything. Why me? She asked softly, unable to resist the question any longer. Adrian's gaze softened, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the Mafia Boss exterior. Because you're different, he admitted. You're strong, smart, and unafraid to face danger. And, because when I look at you, I see someone I can't ignore. Someone who challenges me, intrigues me, and, maybe even understands me. Emma's breath caught. The confession, subtle yet powerful, ignited something inside her. She felt exposed, yet seen in a way she never had before. The danger of his world, the intensity of their connection, and the thrill of the unknown all collided in a heady mix she couldn't resist. For a long moment, they simply stood together, the city lights shimmering around them, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Emma realized that this was just the beginning, the danger, the passion, and the undeniable connection between them had only started to unfold. Adrian Russo had pulled her into a world she had never imagined, and there was no turning back. As she left the estate that night, Emma's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, danger, and impossible choices. But she also knew that she wanted to face it all, with Adrian Russo by her side. The storm had arrived, and she was no longer running from it. She was in it, completely, and the exhilaration of it made her heart race faster than fear ever could. Little did she know, the coming days would test her courage, challenge her instincts, and push her into situations where every choice mattered. And at the center of it all would be Adrian Russo, a man as dangerous as he was irresistible, as ruthless as he was passionate, and who had just begun to reveal the depths of his world and his heart. The following morning, Emma tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to Adrian. The danger he carried, the intensity he exuded, and the way he had drawn her into his world, it all consumed her thoughts. She felt both exhilarated and terrified, knowing that every choice she made could have consequences she wasn't prepared for. Her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian, "Meet me tonight. There's something you need to see." Emma hesitated for a moment, glancing at the growing pile of work on her desk. She knew she shouldn't go, yet curiosity, and something deeper, pushed her forward. She realized she had crossed a line, one from which there was no turning back. She left the office early, heart racing, and drove to the location Adrian had specified, a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The warehouse loomed like a fortress, dimly lit and imposing. Emma's pulse quickened, and a wave of apprehension washed over her. She was entering Adrian's world fully now, and there was no safety net, no escape. When she stepped inside, she found Adrian waiting, his posture relaxed yet commanding, his eyes sharp and calculating. "You came," he said simply, his voice low and full of meaning. Emma swallowed hard. "I needed to know why you brought me here," she admitted. Adrian nodded, as if expecting her honesty. "This is where decisions are made, Emma. Where power is displayed, alliances are tested, and loyalty is proven. You need to understand that in my world, trust is everything, and betrayal is unforgivable." He walked toward a table, gesturing for her to follow. Laid out before them were documents, photographs, and maps, evidence of rival factions, illegal dealings, and dangerous connections. Emma's stomach churned. This was more than she had imagined, and yet she felt a strange thrill. She realized she was witnessing the inner workings of a world that most people only saw in headlines or gossip, the world Adrian Russo ruled with a mix of fear, strategy, and power. "It's a lot," she whispered. Adrian's gaze softened slightly as he watched her. "It is. And it's not safe. But I trust you enough to see it. I need someone who can understand without fear clouding their judgment." Her heart skipped a beat. His trust felt like both a gift and a challenge. She wanted to rise to it, to prove herself, but she also felt the weight of the danger surrounding them. She glanced at him, realizing how much she had come to rely on his presence, even in moments of fear. Just then, a loud noise echoed from the warehouse entrance. Emma's heart jumped as Adrian's expression hardened instantly. Without a word, he moved toward the threat, his body coiled like a predator ready to strike. She followed instinctively, staying close, her adrenaline surging. 2 men appeared, their intentions clear, and in moments, Adrian had assessed them with a precision that left her in awe. He neutralized the threat with calm efficiency, a display of power that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Emma's pulse raced. She had always known Adrian was dangerous, but witnessing his control firsthand was different. It was personal, immediate, and all-consuming. She felt a mix of fear, awe, and an undeniable attraction. The line between danger and desire blurred, leaving her confused yet electrified. When the men were gone, Adrian turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You see now why I warned you," he said quietly. "This is my life, Emma. It's dangerous, it's ruthless, and it doesn't leave room for mistakes. But," his gaze softened, just slightly, "I want you here. Not because it's easy, but because I believe you can handle it." Emma felt a rush of conflicting emotions. The fear of the world he lived in collided with the thrill of being a part of it, and the magnetic pull she felt toward him intensified. She wanted to reject him, to protect herself, but a deeper part of her, the part that had been craving adventure and connection, wanted to embrace it all. I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "But I want to try. I want to understand." Adrian stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "That's all I ask. Step by step, Emma. And know this, once you step into my world, there's no turning back. But I promise, you won't regret it." His words sent shivers down her spine, not just from their meaning, but from the way he spoke them, with a mix of authority, care, and something deeper she couldn't yet name. As they left the warehouse, the tension between them was palpable. Emma felt exposed yet alive, terrified yet exhilarated. She realized that the connection they were forming was no longer just about curiosity or danger, it was something more profound, something that neither could ignore. Every glance, every touch, every word carried weight, and she found herself drawn closer to Adrian despite the risks. That night, as she lay in bed, Emma replayed the events over and over. The thrill, the fear, and the attraction were overwhelming. She knew that her life had changed irrevocably, that the choices she was making would have consequences she couldn't yet see. And she also knew that she was powerless to resist the pull of Adrian Russo, the man who had entered her life like a storm and refused to leave. Little did she know, the coming days would test not only her courage but her heart. She would face betrayal, danger, and shocking truths that would force her to question everything she believed about trust, love, and survival. And at the center of it all would be Adrian Russo, a man as dangerous as he was irresistible, as ruthless as he was passionate, and whose proposal, when it came, would shock everyone around them. The following days were a whirlwind for Emma. She tried to maintain a sense of normalcy at work, but her mind was constantly on Adrian and the dangerous world he had pulled her into. Every interaction with him carried an intensity that left her both exhilarated and anxious. She knew she was in over her head, yet a part of her had come to crave the thrill, the danger, and the magnetic pull of his presence. One evening, Adrian called her unexpectedly. "Meet me at the usual place," he said, his voice smooth but urgent. Emma could hear the tension beneath his calm exterior, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. She quickly left her apartment and made her way to the rooftop bar where their story had begun. The city lights stretched out before her, but she barely noticed. All she could focus on was him, the man who had become the center of her world in just a few short days. Adrian was already there when she arrived, leaning against the railing as usual, but his expression was serious, almost grim. "We have a problem," he said immediately. "Someone close to me has betrayed me, and it puts both of us at risk." Emma's stomach tightened. Betrayal in Adrian's world was never minor, it was dangerous, and it often came with consequences that were impossible to predict. "Who?" she asked, trying to mask her fear. "That's not important right now," he replied. "What matters is that you stay close, trust my judgment, and follow my lead. Do you understand?" Emma nodded, her heart pounding. "I do." The tension in the air was palpable as they left the rooftop, moving through the city in Adrian's sleek black car. The streets seemed quieter than usual, shadows deeper, and every corner felt like a potential threat. Emma gripped her seat, her mind racing with questions. Who had betrayed him? And why drag her into it? She knew enough to understand that she was no longer just a bystander, she was part of his world now, and that world was filled with danger she couldn't fully comprehend. They arrived at a private estate on the outskirts of the city, one that Emma had never seen before. It was fortified, imposing, and clearly meant to intimidate. Adrian led her inside to a large room filled with monitors, phones, and stacks of documents. "This is where I handle threats," he explained. "And this betrayal, it's serious." Emma's eyes widened as she looked at the images on the screens. Faces she didn't recognize, locations marked with red pins, and plans that clearly involved her in ways she hadn't anticipated. This is all connected to me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Adrian's gaze softened, though the intensity never left his eyes. "Indirectly. But because you're close to me now, you're exposed. That's why I need you here, to understand the stakes, and to prepare for what's coming." As they strategized, Emma felt a growing connection to him, a mix of trust and desire that she couldn't deny. She realized that despite the danger, she wanted to be by his side, to face whatever came next together. And yet, a part of her couldn't ignore the fear gnawing at her, fear not just for herself, but for the man who had become so important to her life. Hours passed as they worked in silence, the only sound the occasional click of a keyboard or the low hum of a monitor. Finally, Adrian leaned back, his expression unreadable. "There's something you need to see," he said, his voice quieter now. He gestured toward a folder he had set aside. Inside were documents that revealed a shocking betrayal. Someone in his inner circle had been working against him, feeding information to rival factions. Emma's breath caught as she looked at the names and faces, realizing just how deep the danger went. This is serious," she whispered, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Adrian nodded. "It is. And it changes everything. I need to act, and I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that?" Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Yes. I trust you." He studied her for a moment, his gaze intense, and then the faintest hint of a smile touched his lips. "Good. Because once we move, there's no turning back. And Emma, this isn't just about power or revenge. It's about survival. Yours and mine." The tension in the room was suffocating, but beneath it, a current of something else flowed, an unspoken connection, a growing intimacy that neither could ignore. Emma felt it in the way Adrian looked at her, in the way his hand brushed hers briefly, sending a shock of electricity through her. She realized then that the danger, the betrayal, and the uncertainty were all part of the thrill, and part of the growing bond between them. As the night deepened, Adrian outlined his plan. They would confront the traitor, secure their position, and send a message to anyone who dared challenge him. Emma listened intently, absorbing every detail, every strategy. She realized that she was no longer just an observer, she was an active participant in a world she had once feared. And despite the danger, despite the stakes, she felt a surge of empowerment, knowing she could face it alongside him. When the plan was set, Adrian turned to her, his expression softer now, almost vulnerable. "Emma, I know this is overwhelming. I know it's dangerous. But I need you to understand something." "What?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't usually let people in, he admitted. But with you, it's different. You matter to me. More than I expected, more than I can explain. And that's why I'm telling you everything. Because if we're going to survive this, we have to trust each other completely. Emma's chest tightened. The words were unexpected, yet they resonated deeply. She felt a mix of fear, excitement, and a growing desire she couldn't ignore. The trust he placed in her, the vulnerability he showed, made her feel closer to him than ever before. I trust you, she said softly, her eyes meeting his. Completely. Adrian's gaze lingered on her for a long moment, and then he stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Good, he whispered. Because once this is over, nothing will be the same. And I want you by my side, through everything. Emma felt her heart race, the pull between them stronger than ever. She knew that the coming days would be filled with danger, betrayal, and impossible choices. But she also knew that she didn't want to face it alone. Adrian Russo had become the center of her world, and she was ready to step fully into his storm, no matter the cost. As they prepared for the confrontation ahead, Emma realized one undeniable truth. In Adrian Russo's world, trust was fragile, danger was constant, and every choice carried weight. And yet, for the first time, she felt alive in a way she never had before, because she was no longer just a spectator. She was part of his world, part of his life, and part of the storm that was about to change everything. The tension had been building for days, and Emma could feel it in every fiber of her being. The betrayal within Adrian's circle had been revealed, the danger was real and pressing, and yet, there was a strange thrill in knowing that she was standing by his side. She had followed him into a world of shadows, power, and uncertainty, and now there was no turning back. Tonight, everything would change, either for the better, or forever. They arrived at a secluded warehouse on the edge of the city, the location Adrian had deemed safest for confronting the traitor. The air was thick with anticipation, every sound amplified in the quiet night. Adrian moved with precision, calm but ready, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Emma stayed close, her heart pounding, but with an unshakable resolve. She had chosen this path, she had chosen him. The confrontation was swift. The traitor, one of Adrian's most trusted men, had been working with rival factions to undermine him. But Adrian was prepared. With a combination of intelligence, strategy, and undeniable authority, he neutralized the threat, ensuring that his power remained intact. Emma watched, a mixture of fear and awe filling her as she realized just how formidable he truly was. He was a force of nature, and she had stepped into the eye of the storm. Once the danger passed, Adrian turned to her, his expression softening. The adrenaline of the confrontation still lingered, but now there was something else in his eyes, a depth of emotion that few had ever seen. You did well tonight, he said quietly. More than well. You stayed composed, alert, and you trusted me. That means more than you know. Emma felt a rush of warmth at his words, her heart swelling with pride and affection. She had feared the danger, but standing there, she realized she also feared losing him, the man who had become the center of her life in a way she never anticipated. I just did what I thought I had to, she replied, her voice soft but steady. Adrian stepped closer, the intensity in his gaze returning, tempered now with vulnerability. Emma, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said from the start, but the circumstances, they never allowed it. I can't let this go any longer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box, the kind she had only seen in movies. Her breath caught in her throat as he opened it, revealing a ring that glittered even under the dim lights of the warehouse. Her heart raced, a mix of shock, disbelief, and anticipation. Adrian Russo, the man of power, danger, and mystery, was about to make a move she had never expected. He knelt before her, his gaze unwavering. Emma, he said, his voice low and sincere, I know our world is dangerous. I know we face risks every single day. But I also know that I can't imagine a life without you by my side. Will you marry me? For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Emma's mind raced, replaying every encounter, every moment of tension and intimacy, every choice that had led her here. The man before her, the mafia boss, the storm, the danger, was offering her not just a life, but a partnership, a promise of loyalty and love in a world where trust was rare. Tears welled in her eyes, and she felt a mixture of emotions, fear, joy, relief, and overwhelming love. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling. Yes, I will. Adrian's face broke into a rare, genuine smile. He slid the ring onto her finger, and for the first time, the walls between them seemed to melt. He stood, pulling her into his arms, holding her close as if he could shield her from everything in the world. Emma felt the tension, the danger, and the adrenaline of the past days dissolve into a single, electrifying moment of intimacy and trust. From now on, Adrian murmured against her ear, you're not just part of my world, you're part of my life. And I'll protect you, cherish you, and fight for you, no matter what comes. Emma rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. She realized then that love in Adrian Russo's world was not simple or safe, but it was real, intense, and all-consuming. The danger that had once terrified her now felt like a shared thrill, a bond that tied them together more deeply than either could have imagined. The night stretched on, the city lights shimmering around them, reflecting the storm they had endured and the future they would face together. Emma knew that life with Adrian would never be ordinary, that danger would always linger, and that their love would be tested in ways most people couldn't imagine. But she also knew that she was ready to face whatever came next, with the man who had captivated her heart and soul. As they walked away from the warehouse, hand in hand, the weight of the past week seemed to lift slightly. The betrayal, the danger, the fear, they had faced it together and emerged stronger. And now, with the promise of their future sealed, Emma felt a surge of hope and determination. She knew challenges lay ahead, but with Adrian by her side, she was ready for anything. And somewhere deep within the shadows of the city, a new chapter of their lives had begun, one filled with passion, loyalty, and the kind of love that defied danger and darkness. Adrian Russo had shocked everyone with his proposal, but more importantly, he had chosen Emma, and together, they were unstoppable. For Emma, the storm was no longer something to fear. It was a force to embrace, a whirlwind of danger, passion, and unbreakable trust, and she was standing at the center of it, hand in hand with the man who had changed her life forever.